you can do cool shit on the bike and you can empty your tank, and it has nothing to do with racing or professional cycling or anything anybody told you to do.
Welcome to Top Tube, a cycling podcast where amateur riding meets opinion on the pro peloton.
You speak no word of lie. do you want to pick up the baton there? Brad? Carry on.
Yeah,
Who are you with?
Yeah. I just
Top Tube, remember? Podcast. Yeah.
I stuttered, and that turned into a bigger stutter. Welcome to Top Tube. No. Welcome to Top Tube, a cycling podcast where... Fuck!
We've got
For God's
20 minutes
sake,
of gold.
man.
Yeah.
Right.
I just won't be able to cut any of this.
It's all right. I'm going to do it this time. Welcome to Top Tube, a cycling podcast where amateur riding meets opinion on the pro peloton. With me, as ever, this week is the Benny Hill to my Box Hill, David Quainton.
Thank you very much. Hello.
And the Les Dennis to my Rowan Dennis, Stephen Bowley. Steve.
I wanted to be the Giro Rosa to his Fred West,
Yes,
but I wasn't allowed to be.
But we rightly cut that for reasons of taste. It's
Can
a
you
question of taste,
do
really.
a Mavis Wilton impression, which will mean nothing to our international listeners?
And Mavis.
Wilton impression.
Well, I don't really know.
It's not
Vita.
bad. Yes. I mean, apologies to anyone
It
from
probably is,
outside
but
the UK.
I think apologies to anyone would be
Yes.
more apt. So, how are we, chaps? We're fresh from a commute in which two of us were on road bikes for normal people. And Steve, you chose the natty combo of a city gent suit and tie with the Boris bike.
Yes, well, not so much chose as was reduced to it. However, it was a novel experience because I have never ridden a Boris or indeed Santander bike before. I was a bit, what's the words?
Fast?
No, I was a bit hesitant at first. I can sort of compare its handling dynamics as somewhere on the spectrum between a specialised LA's sportive bike and an iceberg. However, once I picked it up, I realised it only had 3 gears, so that made a bit difficult to overtake people. And I suspect that if you are going to overtake people on a commute home through one of London's central cycling arteries, you need to commit to it. And unfortunately, me bent over the handlebars, spinning at 180 revolutions a minute,
miles per hour,
was probably going to intimidate no one. So it just meant that anyone I passed got annoyed and passed me back.
I mean, it turns like a frigate, which doesn't really help. It was really impressive to watch you with your legs spinning away like a hamster.
gunning it down,
absolutely,
dressed as Bertie Wooster down the north bank.
I still managed to drop Graham several times. So.
But I don't really understand why you chose to keep your tie on and pulled all the way to the top just to reduce your ability to breathe to an absolute minimum. It was a bold choice.
Never knowingly underdressed on the bike, are you?
Well, if you're going to make it's an aesthetic choice, and you may as well go all the way.
Talking of which, I was dressed, and this is, well, it's an endorsement of sorts. I was dressed head to toe in Rafa gear, and you're a real stickler for what one wears when one is on the bike. So Rafa jersey, dark blue, navy blue, black shorts, and navy blue and black with a tasteful little bit of white in the socks, with white shoes on a white bicycle. Flawless, in my humble opinion. What's wrong with that?
Well, what isn't wrong with that? I mean, firstly, it wasn't so much a navy top, and even was it a navy top? Was it an off black top? Either way, it doesn't go with black shorts.
Already angry.
Yeah, I mean, again, plain black shorts don't work with anything. Black shorts with a touch of with a highlight, a la Jan Ulrich Telecom team circa 1999. Absolutely golden. Plain black with a plain top, which is a slightly different shade. It's just a huge clash and frankly a disaster. And as for Rafa all over, well, I think we all know, those in the know what Rafa implies a sort of a certain nouveau approach to cycling participation. I like to call them Riff Rafa, if I may.
I'm a fan, for the sake of balance, as well I might be. David, what was your perspective on our on the third member of our chain?
I'd just like to pick up on the Jan could dress in whatever he likes, and you would think that he looked. I mean, he could dress like Freddie Mercury and get onto a bike, and you'd feel like, well, he looks amazing, and then the absolute pinnacle of cycling fashion, because Jan Ullrich is. You used to have a poster of. You have more than one poster of him in your bedroom.
It's funny you say that, because I used to. After you've ribbed me on this, I was very much validated to learn that on our Instagram feed, when David, at my recommendation, posted a picture of Jan Ullrich, I believe, in his World Champions get-up on a Pinarello, one of those Pinarello time trial bikes, first ridden by Miguel Indurain, with the smaller front wheel than the rear. It instantly garnered 3 times as many likes on our Instagram feed as any other picture.
What's our Instagram feed, David? You can find us at
Top Tube Podcast. You can always find us on Twitter by the same handle, and on Facebook.
So what else have we been doing this week? Apart from what have we been feeding our Instagram with?
I'll tell you what you and me did this afternoon.
Go on.
Which is very nice. We spoke to the former Cannondale cyclist and now pretty much the king of Strava, king of the mountains, Phil Gaimon.
I thought I was the king of Strava, king of the mountains.
Well, you'd think so, but
you've got to go some to beat our man Phil now.
He is. If you don't know his pro career, he had a kind of fleeting pro career, really, on and off for 2 or 3 years. Finished up at the age of 31, 30, but since then embarked on what he describes as the worst retirement ever, but for everyone else I think is the most enjoyable. He's the fastest person up the hardest climb in the world, which is something we'll talk about later.
What about the thing he's actually most famous for?
He obviously hit headlines last year because he had a race with... Do you want to explain from the top how he ended up racing Fabian Cancellara?
Well, I believe it's because, and I wholeheartedly support him here, he took on something of a personal crusade against perceived doping in the sport, and ended up having a fairly public spat with Fabian Cancellara about issues I can't precisely recall, and it became some.
Well, it's over whether or not Cancellara had. So the broad accusation was that Cancellara had motor doped to win, for example, San Remo.
Yeah, and Gaimon is was always a very vocal and visual
anti-doping
kind of advocate. In that he's famously got a bar of soap tattoo to demonstrate clean cycling and the fact that he is a clean cyclist. So when he brought out his book, this was obviously picked up. It garnered a lot of publicity for it, and he ended up having a race with Cancellara, which he won comfortably, actually.
But Phil he's currently the fastest man on what is widely recognised as the world's hardest climb in Hawaii.
And also what's widely recognised as the world's longest climb in Colombia, which he did last week. Anyway, we got in touch with him, and we had a really good chat with him earlier today, which we'll play you later on in the podcast.
Yeah, but first, a little bit of news, chaps.
So the biggest race of this week, indeed the biggest race of the year so far, the one that's the first one really to get all the big stars out, is the UAE Tour, formerly the Abu Dhabi Tour and the Dubai Tour, which have combined,
haven't they?
Obviously, for Team UAE, this is a pretty big race, and we'll come back to their exploits on today's stage, which was the first mountain finish, in a minute.
I have 2 questions to go in this news section.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to pose to anyone out there who wants to answer, but more specifically...
Is one of them, who am I? Because I forgot to introduce myself at the top of the
I am the Giro Rosa.
So let's get that out of the way. Yeah. I'm Graham Wilgoss, still. What are your 2 questions, Steve?
Firstly, if you combined the shoulders of Tony Martin and Stephen Kruijswijk, would you come up with a normal man's shoulders? One is particularly rounded. One is very much coat hanger shaped.
It's not. I'd say that particular question is not the best for a podcasting format.
Well, I may put it on our YouTube video.
Yeah.
And a seamless introduction to our YouTube videos, which can be found on YouTube.
Just search for the top tube cycling podcast.
Yes, but don't get too excited. They're just a version of the audio, but with some photos attached relative to the content.
You had 2 questions.
And the second question
is what is television?
What is television? No, it is. Jumbo Visma, Team Jumbo Visma.
Are they Jumbo Visma?
The second oldest team in professional cycling. Having been going now for 35 years. My question is, what is the oldest?
It's got to be De Koning, isn't it? Quick step.
No, David.
FDJ.
No, well, that's absolutely appalling that you don't know that.
AG2R.
No. Oh, well, you're embarrassing yourselves now.
Who is it?
Come on, put us
Of
on
Movie
misery.
Star. Originally the Reynolds team, which became...
I'd call them
Movistar.
I mean, I know we were all watching the Oscars, but movie star.
In Oscars week.
Movistar, yes, indeed. Which
Murray
became
Quintana was
obviously
up for Best Actor.
Benesto under the auspices of Miguel Indurain in the 90s. So 40 years old coming up.
Breaking Away is a good film, isn't it?
It is. Are we going to talk about
The best
great
cycling
cycling films?
There aren't many.
Because
are there?
American Flyers with Kevin Costner and Kevin Costner's moustache.
And A Sunday in Hell. Are they the only 3?
Is that
Tour de Pharmacy?
Tour de Pharmacy.
This is what happens when you work out really, really hard.
Not enough time
On
has
the bicycle.
passed for us to conclusively say that Tour de Pharmacy is great, but it's well on the way.
Anywho,
Anyway,
today we had the first mountaintop finish in which we of the year in which we really saw all the big guns there. A lot of them are deliberately undercut. So Tom Dumoulin was there, he didn't threaten. Nibali was there, he didn't threaten. Rarely does outside of a Grand Tour, to be honest. It was won in the end by a man who, this is the latest he's had to wait since 2009 to win a stage. The 426-year-old Alejandro Valverde.
the latest in the season.
Latest in the season, yeah. He's since he came back from his doping ban, he's always won a race before now.
Tell you who else didn't threaten. Another Team Jumbo Visma rider, Nielsen Paulus, who's frequently lacking in potency, as his name suggests.
That's enjoyable. That's something we can all enjoy. It's something we can also all enjoy. I know several of them are undercooked, but isn't it great to look down the roster of riders and see that much star power in a single field? It's the first race that I've been genuinely excited about, not because of the riding, but just because of the personnel. And it's a very shallow way to look at any race, but
you want to watch the best riders. That's why we all enjoy the Grand Tour as much as anything else. So the GC on that note is pretty interesting. Primoz Roglic is leading 14 seconds ahead of
saying his name as many times as possible.
David Gaudu from FDJ, who is another young rider, 22 years old.
David who?
Gaudu.
Sure about that.
How would you pronounce it, Mr.
If it was a movie star.
What do you want to remind of on what Gorka Izagirre's brother is called, David? Because last week you said he was called Ion Izagirre.
Ion.
You'll find it's John.
Oh, there we are. Anyway, David Gaudu, how would you pronounce David Gaudu's name?
I'm content for you to embarrass yourself. I'm not going to.
Oh, come on! You got to stand there and take it. Who else we got in the top 10, Dave?
Emmanuel Buchmann, Wilco Kelderman, Dan Martin. I think Dan Martin would have expected to do better today, wouldn't he? Would we say? With it,
he came dancing. To me, he came dancing up to the finish like he had gone too late, like he still had plenty left in the tank.
Doesn't he?
Yeah. I think he left it a little too late.
Is there a worse person at timing a finish than Dan Martin?
Steve, is there a worse person at timing the finish than Dan Martin in the pro peloton?
I certainly remember a few times that Dan Martin, Liège-Bastogne-Liège a couple of years ago, for example, where he went far too early. Albeit, actually, one of the great unanswerable questions is when he went round the last corner and was about to start his sprint to the line with a gap of some 30 metres over the chasing pack, and his wheels came out from under him. Would he have been able to make it? I think he would have, but we'll never know.
We'll never know.
And I think that's something that's going to haunt him in his doting years.
Who else we got there?
Tom Dumoulin, obviously, even
Big
an
Tom.
undercooked Big Tom is still within a minute of the leader. Victor Delapart, and then a British rider at 9. Can you tell me who it is? He finished on today's mountain stage 8th, and he is 9th on GC. He rides with one of the bigger teams in the
It's one of the Yates brothers, clearly.
So no, it's not one of the Yates brothers. It's going to. Is it Team Sky's new boy?
It's not.
It's James. Oh, I know this. It's James Knox.
It's Knox.
Yeah. Foxy Knoxy, as no one yet calls him.
Well, we will continue to call him.
Foxy Knoxy.
Foxy Knoxy,
sure.
As he will now be known.
Ahead of David Formolo.
Who is James Knox, seriously?
James Knox rides for De Koning. He is 23 years old. And last season he had a few races where he was pretty much there to destroy brakes and sat on the front for a very long time and was very impressive to a lot of casual and serious commentators. And he's very highly thought of. I think.
Well, actually, David, it's funny you mentioned that because there's been a number of performances by some seriously impressive younger talents, not just the likes of Evenepoel, but a couple of other standouts this week.
I think you're referring to the Volta Algarve. Can you tell me how many of the top 10 in the GC of the Volta Algarve are under the age of 25? I would guess.
6.
Nailed it first time.
All right.
Can you tell me who?
That's the level we expect
Exactly.
on Top Tube.
What does he win?
It was won by Tadej Pogacar, who I think that's how you pronounce his name. Let's not examine too hard.
Set a high bar for pronunciation.
Get on with it.
Of UAE team member, it's 20 years old and beating the likes of Wout Poels, beating Enric Mas, a very young rider himself, Zednik Stuybar. Again, I mean, it's only in the season, so as you've said many times, Stephen, a lot of riders will be undercooked, but still, it's pretty impressive, isn't it? 20 years old.
To beat Stuybar, yes.
Yeah. Nielsen Paulus also finishing in the top 10.
Demonstrating that he's in fact not Paulus.
Indeed.
Wow.
He's kind of, him and Sepp Kuss are the great hopes of American cycling at the moment, aren't they, really?
Well, I think we all understand that there aren't any great hopes in American cycling. But yeah.
Let's put that one to bed. Thank you. Moving on.
The other major race I guess to take note of was the Vuelta a Andalusia, which was won by Jakob Poulsen. Adam Yates, top 10. Tim Wellens took a couple of stages, early doors. Everyone likes Tim Wellens. He's a bit like...
You're not allowed to say early doors in a cycling podcast.
No, you just said it.
Yeah.
Well,
you're allowed to, everyone gets one. Tell him, David.
We're not doing it again.
Everyone gets one.
Yeah, everyone gets one. Tim Wellens, I kind of package him along with Rigoberto Urán in that he's one of the cyclists that everyone likes, isn't he? Tim Wellens is great to watch.
Yes, the correctly named Rigoberto Urán. Urán is actual real full name.
So good they named him twice.
What was the question?
Tim Wellens. We love Tim Wellens, don't we? Does anyone not like Tim Wellens?
Yes, in a platonic, in the very best form of platonic love. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim Wellens will win things, but Tim Wellens characterised his early career by taking a lot of punts, if I may say, from reasonably far out and often, as I like to call it, doing a Nibali, where he would, take an outrageous and unseemly yo-yo off the front of the pack and dangle there for some time before being brought discreetly back. No more said about it. Obviously, Nibali occasionally gives the lie to this by flukily winning some Milan San Remos or the old Grand Tour, but I think it's the exception to the rule.
And finally, in our roundup of the news, talking about young cyclists, we were Clara Koppenberg won the Setmana Ciclista Valenciana ahead of Soraya Paladin and Graham's very good friend Ashley Moorman in third.
Moorman Passier, yeah. We'll hear from Ash on the pod in a few weeks' time, hopefully.
That's the news. We'll see you in part 2, unless I'm being looked at like. Maybe I was going to mention Victor Campinat's having a crack at officially announcing that he's going to have a crack at the hour record. That sounds like news.
Yeah.
I mean, if we mention that, maybe we should also say get well soon to Ben Swift.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quite the bang.
He's ruptured spleen, rode into a rock, which apparently is not a good idea.
Didn't lose consciousness though. No. So I read the account from his doctor, which was the Team Sky doctor, which was. That was a good sign. So anyway, he's on the mend. Get well soon, Swifty. Victor Campenaerts is going to have a crack at the hour record, Wigo's hour record, but in Mexico City.
As is John Archibald, who recently set a flat Earth record. Sorry, I think I do mean a sea level world record.
Flat Earth, he just denied the deep state's involved in everything.
I've just outed John Archibald as a flat earther, but he also set a sea level world record, beating Chris Boardman's British record for the 4,000 metres pursuit, and the second fastest time ever, just behind one set at altitude.
So, Victor Campenaerts, just to sum him up briefly, Lotto Soudal rider. He finished third at last year's Road World Championships in the time trial behind Rowan Dennis and Big Tom. Yeah. He has been training in Namibia in order to get the required altitude training in. Mexico City, very, very similar environment in terms of altitude. So he's going to have a crack at that in April.
It's famously thin air, isn't it? I mean, all the many sprinting and long jump world records are done in Mexico City, famously.
Well, I'm going to propose, in fact,
congratulations, mate! That's amazing news. Why didn't you tell us?
You heard it here first.
Are you going to do it on the podcast?
No, I'm going to propose to Graham, one of marriage, but in fact, a sock bet that John Archibald will best.
Oh, I like this.
Whether or not one of them beats the current world record held by Wiggins, but I believe that John Archibald will certainly be the best time this year, because I believe that he, in beating that 4,000 metre time, is phenomenally talented, and we'll hear a lot more about him, especially when he leaves the boards, as it were, and inevitably goes pro at some point.
When he leaves Barbados.
Indeed.
Which is the capital of the
how do we pronounce it? The hub.
Capital of the flats.
The hub
what bike testing?
Trade track cycling team.
It's an unusual setup.
A very exciting bunch. Yeah. Anyway, I think that will conclude the news.
And we'll see you in part. We won't. We will speak to you, and you will hear from us.
I think you can say see. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll be back in part 2.
Give them some credit.
Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 2, in which we are going to be discussing not what is the most you've suffered on a bike, at our last episode, but what is the hardest climb. And hardest is going to be defined by the most you have suffered. Gentlemen, I'm going to start with Graham.
In honour, we should say, of our guest this week, Phil Gaimon.
Yeah, of course, yes, in honour.
Hands down for me, the Mortirolo in the Italian Alps. I mean, there's the picture that we can put up on Insta again.
The picture that redefined the phrase 1,000 yards.
That David took of me about 3 kilometres up, I think. Probably not even, maybe a little bit. So the Mortirolo is 12.8 kilometres in length. Your total elevation gain is 1,315. The height at the start is 537 metres. Height at the finish 1,852. They are your stats. Average gradient is 11%, but it feels like a wall the entire way up.
When you first hit it, you're like, well, okay, this must just be a steep bit at the start, and because you're winding through that village at the bottom, and then it kind of opens out onto the side of the hill. And we both rode it right in the middle of summer.
We did it in serious heat, but I can just remember thinking,
wow.
It can't possibly be this difficult all the way, and it just is. Yeah. But there are so went into it knowing fine well that there were certain landmarks that we know the importance of landmarks when we're climbing difficult climbs, right? Because they let you know that you've got a certain way, and you can tick that off, and that's like a mental box to check, and it makes you feel like you're making progress. So there's the San Mateo.
It makes you feel like a big man.
It can make you feel like, at least,
Well, so for example,
you're getting somewhere.
So to take another famous climb on Von 2, you make it to the forested section. You have that turn. Then you're working your way through that, and it's a nightmare until there is one hairpin that you can go around the outside of, and it's relatively flat and it feels better. you exit the forest and you get to Chalet
Chalet Reynard.
and that's another little bit. And then you've got the moonscape and the final kind of 500 metres, which is really steep.
But don't stop at Chalet Reynard, because I did that once and I was crushing it. And then 10 minutes later, I started again, and it was like I had a leg transplant, and I was suddenly an 85-year-old woman.
And you've got the Simpson Memorial anyway. The point is that those staging posts are really important to kind of knock off on the way through. Obviously, on Alpe d'Huez it's easier because you've got the countdown of hairpins. You don't have that on the Mortirolo.
And you'll always feel great as long as you don't get passed by an 85-year-old man who's unfeasibly fit, and it just doesn't make any sense physically how he can be that fast, and it makes you feel like an amoeba in comparison. That always happens to me.
Part of the difficulty of the Mortirolo is that it's quite isolated, and because of its difficulty, not many people give it a crack. So you're out on your own most of the time. So you and me did it together, David, and you went off, and I think you finished about 5 or 6 minutes ahead of me. And you're just sort of on this lonely plough of misery, and you're just eating a brick wall most of the time. So there were 2 landmarks that I knew that I was supposed to look for. So there's the San Mateo Church on 4 kilometres, which I don't remember
absolutely
at all,
no recollection.
And the Marco Pantani Monument,
which I kind of saw, and then I couldn't stop for. I mean, I might as well have, because I was going so slow anyway. But I was so focused on the horribly slow cadence I was doing. I should say at this point that this is the hardest climb I've done as well. So there won't be a different one from me.
And rightly so. I don't remember the Pantani Monument at all either. On the way up, all the way down. The whole experience was, I mean, truly excellent to have done, and a lovely one to have ticked off. Hey, Steve.
So I've heard.
And so the other thing I remember is those last. It sort of flattens out. It does get easier after 8-9k.
What was worse, going up or coming down?
Well, for David, coming down because you've got 2 flat tires.
Well, no, it's still was going out. It was so warm that I exploded the front tire. I had clinchers on and exploded the front tire twice under braking, which was, a shame and frankly annoying, and it didn't make us any cooler.
The last 4 kilometres, supposedly a little bit easier, but I can just remember those final 4 hairpins and being able to see and hear you at the top, and by which point you had recovered enough to give me some encouragement. And not the patronising encouragement that you do sometimes, don't I, but the genuine, blimey, that was hard. You're nearly there, mate, kind of thing.
Did he do the whistling?
No, he only tends to do that when he wants you to know that he's finding whatever you're doing a lot easier than you are, and so he whistles behind you.
Do you accept that you do that?
Not consciously, but I accept that it happens, yes.
Well, do you believe that?
I accept that it might not be a conscious thing, but that's exactly what he's trying to tell you is, do you know what, I'm finding this so easy, especially when you're putting a bit of a dig in, and David's there in your slipstream.
The thing is, on my own, I do sing up a climb.
Little whistle.
I did, like when I did.
What do you sing?
Alpe d'Huez. Whatever's going through my head at the time. On the way into work today, I was singing Gang of Youth. The Gang of Youth are an Australian band, who are very popular at the moment. I was singing a load of their stuff.
Quite a popular beat combo.
Up Alpe d'Huez, when we went up for the second time, in 2 days, and we went up the second time, I was singing Lightning Seeds. I was pretty much singing the
Life
whole...
of Riley? No,
pretty much the whole of Like You Do, the best of the Lightning Seeds. I went through all of it. Obviously, I didn't do You Show Me because it's terrible.
The internal jukebox.
Yeah.
Yes. Steve, your hardest climb. Let's move this on. Higher? Harder?
Stop being such a football fan, dude. My hardest climb is... Well, obviously hard climbs can be are only as hard as the condition you take into them. So,
and I guess the speed you attack them at as well. I mean, you can make them harder.
I have actually imposed a moratorium on swearing on this podcast, but I'm going to make an exception to that. Obviously, I think for me the hardest climb just depends on how much you happen to feel that you're fucked when you're doing it. On that basis, that can be a 300 meter, molehill in the home counties, or it can be one of the highest road passes in Europe. And actually, on that note, I after some thought, and I've done a lot of climbs, and I've suffered on a lot of climbs, and ultimately, it's always because I've just ridden really hard and my legs have gone. But definitely, I would say the most protracted, and I think it's about duration of suffering here, was the Stelvio a couple of years ago, where we all suffered immensely. I went out there with not brilliant form, but just good enough where I thought I'll have a go at it.
Or kit.
I had great kit.
Didn't you forget your gloves?
You did. You were wearing woolly gloves.
Oh yeah, and I've still got them. My Stelvio gloves. I bought them woolly gloves on the top, and then descended with them until I realised that they were useless because obviously it was cold and wet, and my hands were just slipping off the hoods. But
do you want to give a little kind of what the length of Stelvio?
Well, obviously, yes, it's a long climb if you're not prepared for it. An average gradient of, well, I don't want to say only 7.4%, but what makes it hard is the length of 24.3 and the ultimate altitude at the top of 2,758 metres. And that includes then 1,808 metres of ascent, which is, by comparison, Alpe d'Huez is probably under 1,000 metres of actual ascent from the foot.
About 1,000 metres.
So, yeah, I didn't have great form, but just enough to think, I'll have a go. So I left these two at the bottom and just set a high tempo. And I thought after halfway, I was still going. I was overtaking people, and I felt good. And I was quite surprised, and I was really enjoying it. And then just that cause, I ultimately paid for that. But by the last 5 kilometres, did it get steeper in the last 5, or did it just stop?
Famously gets steeper.
Lost your mind, though.
Right, yeah. So that gradual fatigue in legs that weren't really very well conditioned at that point caught up with me, and by the last 5 kilometres, I just exploded, and it got to the stage where I was moving so slowly. Everyone was really who I encountered, that I was still so motivated to do a decent time that I thought, I reckon it would actually be quicker now if I got off and walked. I think I could probably go a bit faster. So I got off quickly and took my socks off because I couldn't walk in my shoes, and I didn't want to walk in my socks and ruin them. So I took my shoes and my socks off and started to run up. It's quite a smooth road, and did a few hundred metres and thought, well, this is hard work. And I finally got up there, and then I had a wait of well over an hour for David to come up with an empty can of Red Bull tucked in his back pocket, and then obviously Graham
doesn't give you wings. It says it does.
Well, the hardest part then was just standing around at the top for over an hour, getting really cold as well.
Should we hear from Phil?
So let's talk a little bit about him first. Just a quick recap. Phil Gaimon was a very, very good pro continental rider who rode World Tour, slipped back from that, and then went back into World Tour. Rode Paris-Roubaix, rode a lot of big American races, but really only lasted a couple of years at World Tour level. Retired around the age of 30. Since then, he's gone and shown incredible prowess, or to demonstrate his incredible prowess on climbs, including completing the most difficult climb in the world, which is Mauna Kea.
Why, David, is it considered one of the most difficult?
So it's 6.1% gradient, which sounds fine. It is, however, 68.6 kilometres long.
That is ridiculous.
It starts in the sea.
So it finishes at 4,192 metres up. It starts at 0 metres.
That is just ridiculous.
And the tradition is?
And the tradition is that you start with your back wheel in the sea and you make it all the way to the top. For listeners in the UK, the best way to describe it is it's like 30 box hills back to back on a normal road to start with. You then go on to a Mont Ventoux, and that Mont Ventoux is starts at altitude and is a kind of dusty, loose gravel road, which everyone, including our guest we're about to speak to, walks up at some point, even though he has the quickest time. And then you come back onto a final, I think, 2 kilometres of road at the top, which has 20% bits at 4,000 metres in the sky after you've been riding for nearly 5 hours, if you're the world's best there.
And before we come to Phil, another interesting fact, nothing to do with cycling, but it's also the highest mountain in the world if measured from its base to its peak, but much of it is underwater.
Well, it's not the highest, it's the tallest.
It is the tallest mountain in the world.
So, without further gilding the lily, here's American blogger, YouTube star, world boss of the Earth's most difficult climbs.
Consumer of cookies.
And all-round good bloke as well. Lovely man. Yeah, here he is.
On Mauna Kea, that was a weird incident and like a very special day for me. So it was 2016. I had kind of just announced my retirement from pro cycling, which was part against my will and part not. It's kind of like when you've been nauseous and you finally vomit, like it feels good, but you still vomit. That was me retiring from pro cycling.
No doubt.
And so then at that point, 2016, I was still under contract until December 31st.
Yeah.
So my last ride where I was technically a pro cyclist, it was New Year's Eve on Mauna Kea. I just happened to be there for the holidays. And I'd met Kevin Systrom, the founder of Instagram,
right? Yeah.
Who also rides bikes. So I'd done a couple rides with him in LA, and then he happened to be in Kona the same time I was for the holiday, and it was his idea to do this volcano. Like he'd been bucket listing this. And then I was like, yeah, well, I'm playing around on Strava now, so I should try and get that.
Yeah.
So it ended up being like a weird. So you start at the beach, and then you go.
Did you start with your back wheel in the ocean? Because that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the rule. Absolutely, yeah. So you can do it. You can approach it from Hilo or from Kona.
Yeah.
And then you basically go up the same highway from either side. We did Kona because Kevin was staying there, and I think there was construction on Hilo at that time.
Yeah.
Just like on the road, so that sort of worked out. But no, I didn't do anything with as far as the timing. No, it was just when Kevin wanted to do it, and then we had a guide, Big Island Bike Tours. Alex Candelario is a former pro friend of mine. We were never teammates, but we were always, on the same teams, different years.
Yeah.
So you feel like we had the same life. So he does like tours there now where he'll kind of support people up that crazy thing, which I would say is kind of critical if you're trying to do it.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot in the way of gas stations. There's a visitor center when you turn on to Mauna Kea.
Yeah.
But there's not much else.
So kind of timing wise, that turning's about halfway, isn't it? Or distance wise, and then it just you get on
timing wise, yes. Distance wise, no. I think it's like 3/4 of the distance, but half the time, because that's where it gets nuts.
So how was the loose road section? I mean, did you? I
it was
no, but everyone seems to walk on that section.
Yeah, it was bad. It's funny. Like when I was talking to Candelaria about doing it, he was like, okay, you're gonna want to fly out there with two bikes because you're gonna need a special bike. Like you want a mountain bike for the dirt sections. What he told me. And I was like, yeah, that's cute, Kando. I'm World Tour. I don't need that. And then fast forward to like 3 hours in, I'm shouldering my bike with mountain bike pedals running up the thing. I was like, I had 28 cassette. I don't know. These days, I have a SRAM makes a 32 cassette if you get like the Wi-Fi thing now. Which I feel like I could get up it, but it's sandy.
Yeah.
So it's part of its gearing because it's super steep, but it's also you do want some fat tires. So I feel like the ideal setup would be a cross bike with granny gears to throw on for that.
Yeah. And switch out and then switch back on again for the final bit, which is just steep at ridiculous altitude. I mean, how the altitude's obviously unique. Did it affect you physically in a surprising way?
Yeah, it's hard to know. Like pacing that effort is pretty much impossible. Like I just sort of know what threshold feels like, and I would just stay right below it. But I was also like that day, I wasn't really going for a pure effort. Like I was moving all day, but I was also like, it was very emotional. It was my last day as a pro, and I was with Kevin, so I was like Instagram living it. And then I was eating pizza out of the follow car, like it was kind of like a going away party more than a record attempt.
You still have to. I mean, just completing that climb, you can't do it and not be near the edge, though, right? I mean, it's.
Oh yeah. Once I hit the dirt, I was definitely just doing everything I could. Like I was running at 13,000 feet with or whatever that is, 4,500 meters with my bike on my shoulder. I wanted to empty my tank in a lot of ways that day. But the altitude, like once you get up there, I've done a lot of stupid hard training rides. I've done a lot of like outrageous races, and I've never until that day was I like mid effort and just had to stop.
Wow.
But so I got through the dirt, and then I got to the pavement again. I started riding, and I think it's only like 15 minutes from the end of the dirt to I feel like it's not that far to the top. The last stretch of pavement.
I think it's a couple of kilometers, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's 20% or whatever.
Right. Like I started riding that thinking like, okay, we're getting there. We're almost 5 hours in. And then I just stopped and sat on a guardrail in the snow and ate a bar, which like I've never had to stop in my entire life mid-workout. And then I was just like by myself, middle of nowhere.
I want to find the one person, I don't know how long it would have taken, that's managed to do that climb without stopping. Do you know what I mean? I mean, everybody has shouldered the bike at some point. Everyone stopped when they expected. And it's just incredible.
Well, it's also like, just because it's so long, I also stopped at the visitor center to use the bathroom.
Of course. Would you do it again?
I absolutely want to do it again. One, because that was before I was like, now, like from stuff like that, I realized like, oh, there's more to emptying. Like that was such a cool day for me. Partly it was also like the chapter or the beginning of this chapter I didn't know existed at the time of you can do cool shit on the bike and you can empty your tank and it has nothing to do with racing or professional cycling or anything anybody told you to do.
Yeah.
So that was sort of special. Like that's a ride that I think about all the time. And one that since then, like now my full time, like I have bike sponsors and I make a YouTube show where I kill myself on climbs. And I didn't have a camera when I did that. And so I need to go back and sort of document it and show the world. And if I'd listened to Kando and had a bike change at the dirt part, I feel like I could have gone a good 15 minutes faster.
I think on the route you did on Strava, there's 47 people that have completed it. I'm interested to know how many tried.
That's the thing. Yeah. It's not a ride that a lot. I had normal conditions. There were nothing wrong with the conditions. It wasn't a blistering tailwind, but it also wasn't. It didn't get epic at any point. Like at the top, there was snow on the side of the road, but it was clean.
It was fine.
Well, so Hawaii apparently can experience 11 of the 13 climates sort of known on Earth. How many did you go through on the way up? Was it like your own film montage where they
to me, yeah,
passing?
Yeah, to me, it's so bizarre because you start at the beach on a tropical day where there's people, with pina coladas on the, in the water, and then 5 hours later there's a wall of snow on either side of you. It's everything. It's so there was no like precipitation, but yeah, I think that's all the climate zones that I know.
Did the headwind get savage at all?
No, I didn't have any wind that day.
Yeah.
No, at the top we had because of Kevin, we had Dom Perignon chilled in the snow.
Of course.
Pina coladas at the bottom and Dom Perignon at the top.
So, yeah, exactly. Not a bad day.
So you've done Mauna Kea. You've just completed Letras. I mean, how was that?
Letras was cool too. Yeah, Letras was So for perspective, Mauna Kea took me 5 hours. Letras took like 320 something. Right. So different climb. There's not a bit of downhill on Mauna Kea, and Letras had a few downhills. I would say Mauna Kea is like a notch more challenging, and especially given the dirt part. I think Columbia says that Letras is the longest climb in the world. I have to disagree based on that. Yeah. But maybe it's the longest paved climb. I don't know.
That's your job though, right now, is to find those.
Yeah, basically. I just want to, like, for some reason, I love it. Like I see a hill and I'm like, oh, I have to see how fast I can get up that. So just doing crazy shit like Letras and Mauna Kea, like that speaks to my soul.
Do you find now that you're almost the Strava hunter for those climbs? Are you suffering as much on the climbs as you did when you were a pro or World Tour pro? Or I mean, how's it comparing?
I mean, at the end, I'm just as dead as I ever was. I don't have to train like I used to. I probably, like, volume wise, I think I ride like 2/3 as much as I used to. It's significantly less, because doing other things takes a lot of time. But I also don't have to go hard more than twice a week anymore. So it used to be like I would train 5 days a week really hard, and now it's like I'll do one long ride and one group ride and one kind of intense day. So it's a notch down, but I'm able to. But since I have to perform less often, my 1 day power and effort, to be honest, is like pretty comparable to what it was. It's just the next day I can't, and before
you're only what, 33 still, so you're still, if you compare yourself with Valverde,
and some stuff.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I'll be world champion again, and
come out of retirement and be world champion for you this time.
Yeah, I am hill climb world champion. So that's same thing.
So when you're climbing, you because I even when I'm doing outdoors in a dreadfully slow time, I can't complete it without having data in front of me. I just can't do things on feeling because I bust myself. How which side? And then I've read stuff with Contador saying he prefers to do it on feeling or whatever. Where do you fall on that? What are you, a data or a feeling guy?
I think it takes some years to sort of know to be able to do feeling right, and then there's a point where like you trust your feeling more than you trust the numbers once you really know how to do it. So like I said, I know I can feel when my legs are at threshold, and I can stay there, or I can stay half a notch back, no problem, as long as I need to. But that's kind of experience. That's just doing it forever. And if you don't really have that, when it comes to altitude, it's pretty impossible to know what your threshold is. Yeah. So I would think about feeling and look at heart rate a lot more than power, because like once you're over a certain meters, your power is laughable anyway, and trying to stick to anything will not work out. So yeah, these days I'm more feeling if it's a very short effort and I really know, like, if it's less than 10 minutes, I know what my power needs to be. Right. I can kind of look at that to make sure I don't overpace it. But for the most part, yeah, I think that's something I agree with Contador on. Who knew?
Oh, there we go.
That's the first one.
We won't go into that one on this call. Mm-hmm. But yeah. So we've got I don't know how much time or if any you've ever spent in the UK. We have a climb called Box Hill over here, which was used in which is 2.2k at 5.2%. I think the record for it's 4 minutes. What do you reckon you could do that one in?
I looked at it before. I was trying to get there last year. I really like the whole UK hill climb series. The thing is, the events don't suit me. They're too short. Like I could that Box Hill, I feel like I could be okay, but a lot of them are like super short. The stuff you guys do. Mm. And I'm mostly like 15 minutes is where I'm really good.
Right.
So they're all on the short side. Exactly. But I love the scene you guys have there, and it'd be fun to get. The problem is like your hill climb season is right when I have my Fondo in Malibu.
Yeah.
So someday I'll manage a way to do that before I get old and fat. But Box Hill, I looked at that. I was trying to do that last year, and I thought I had a shot at that KOM. Like it seemed like a power that I could do, but nothing I would smash or guarantee myself a take on.
It's too short to smash by a lot anyway, isn't it? I mean,
right, and it's a high level thing. Like anything that 15,000 people have attempted as hard as they can. Yeah. It's not a guarantee, and there's a lot of World Tour and pros and races on there too.
It's one of the most. I think it's one of the most popular segments for a climb in the world.
Yeah, I believe it's like top 5. Yeah, that was why I was trying. There was a point where I was trying to just go for the top 10 Strava segments on Earth, and then I realized a lot of them are too far.
You've got Hawk Hill, I noticed, which is the one that if you turn on Strava Segment Explorer, is the first one that it shows you. So that's
and Old La Honda I think is right there as well. Which they're the same. Which is I think part of that is just because like that's where Strava is and that's where it started. So it's sort of a couple of those hills have a 5-year head start, just because that's where Strava was existing at the time.
Phil, we'll start a crowdfunding campaign for you so that you can do
whatever it takes. Yeah, I listen. I would really love to find a way to get to do the UK thing, and but I can't afford to. Like a lot of the reason my stuff is US based is because I have airline miles, and I can afford to bring my camera guy around.
Yeah.
And international stuff is really tricky to fund. But that is on my list.
We do promise you good cookies if you do make
listen, now
all
I
the
know
cookies
you're
you can
lying.
eat. Yeah.
I know you're lying. You guys don't do cookies over there. It's
Biscuits. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Phil, what are you working on? What are you working on next? What's coming up after Colombia? After you've done the bid?
Yeah, once I post that, it's my videos this year. I'm looking at Phoenix, New York, and then the van trip is going to be some of the Tour of California stuff, and then like Atlanta, Greenville, Chattanooga, Nashville. There's like a lot of cool climbs in the Southeast, which is funny. It's where I'm from, but I haven't been able to get there to do a lot of videos because I live in LA now. So it's sort of a pain in the ass to fly there to do one. So I'm just going to drive there and do all of them in the summer. So a lot of the Southeast stuff, there's some beautiful climbs like in the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Appalachians that I've been wanting to smash for a long time. So I'm gonna go see what I can do there. So everywhere I go, I'll like set up a little event, like ride with the locals, eat their cookies, and like if I can, I'm like since I'm gonna be in a van, I'm gonna try and sleep on the climb. I'm gonna try to like live the climb before I attempt the climb.
Right.
I think that'll be good for the soul of it.
How do we describe you? American blogger, like it says on Google, former cyclist, America's foremost cycling sage, as you might say.
That one's long-winded. Yeah, the title I've given myself is unprofessional cyclist.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going for.
Not mudslinging piece of shit.
No, I try not to do that. Yeah, I try not to do that. I don't. Yeah.
Is there
I'm retired from that for sure.
Anything you'd like us to push?
No, I mean, check out. I think the YouTube show is the main thing I'm working on. I've got some books if you guys want to read the mudslinging that it isn't at all. Yeah. Draft Animals is the most recent one. Pro Cycling on $10 a day has been around a little longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. If people check out my social, I have lots of fun content. I'm around on the internet. And if you're interested in climbing, I'm the guy. Nothing you can do about it.
Hey, look, when you're traveling around later on in the year, don't do what I did. I went to Biarritz and then drove all the way to the Obisque to the foot of it to climb it. I was feeling a bit ill anyway, and I looked in the back of the car and I hadn't got my cycling shoes with me. So
oh no,
and
that's a nightmare.
3 hours.
Everybody does that once. Everybody does that once.
A rite of passage.
Yeah.
Love that you're giving Phil some advice there.
Yeah.
I borrowed a Redlands Classic 2015. I was like the favorite to win it, and I drove to the time trial, which was like a 2-hour drive, and then realized I forgot my shoes. This is in Draft Animals, but I borrowed shoes from a spectator and changed the cleats 15 minutes before the start, and actually had a really good time trial.
So there we go.
So it can be done, but literally it was a stranger's Seedies who. So
that's amazing.
We've really enjoyed how shit you are at retiring, and and we'll continue to watch you with interest.
Yes, we hope you continue to retire. Stay retired.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely not doing the other way. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Stay in touch.
All right.
So that's Phil Gaimon. And big thanks again to Phil for joining us and taking the time. David, do we want to say a thank you to one or two other people?
Yeah, I think we'd just like to say thank you for everyone that's been in contact so far. Everyone that's listened, we've been really overwhelmed, I think, by the response and the number of ears that have been willing.
So many great emails from so many great people.
Do you know what we've had?
Friends of the show.
We've had lots of good comments on our Instagram page. We've had a few people contact us through various guides, and we're really committed to making this the best we can, the best show we can about the joy of amateur cycling, with a little bit of information on the pros as well.
Yeah. Well, it's where the pro peloton hopefully meets, or the other way around. Amateur riding meets the pro peloton.
Yeah. And in many ways,
pro peloton.
Many ways, Phil Gaimon is absolutely the perfect example of the sort of thing we're trying to do, I guess.
Well then, all there's to say is we'll thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
So long, farewell until next time, and all that. Salut.